Like, subscribe, and comment if you're ready to step into a story so dark it still echoes through concrete walls. Because once this door closes, there's no way out. The rain was coming down sideways the night the transport van rolled through the outer gates of Belmarsh Prison. Sodium lights flickered against wet asphalt, turning the yard into a maze of shadows and reflections. Inside the van, inmate Elias Ward sat perfectly still, wrists cuffed low, eyes fixed on nothing. He didn't flinch when the gates slammed shut behind him. He didn't ask where he was being taken. That silence was the first thing the officers noticed, and the first thing that unsettled them. 2 hours earlier, a body had been found on the Thames foreshore near Woolwich. Male. Mid-30s. Hands tied with industrial cable ties. Throat cut clean enough to suggest experience, not panic. In the victim's pocket, detectives found a single laminated card, creased at the edges. Prison visitor clearance. Belmarsh. Elias Ward's name was printed on it. Ward had already been serving time for financial crimes, shell companies, offshore accounts, the kind of fraud that ruined lives without spilling blood. He was due for early review in 6 months. That ended the moment the river gave up its dead. Detective Inspector Mara Hensley stood beneath a dripping awning, watching Ward get escorted inside. She'd been called in because she specialized in cases that went wrong quietly. No press leaks. No mistakes. And Belmarsh was a place where mistakes didn't just cost careers, they cost lives. Ward was processed without incident. No resistance. No anger. When asked if he recognized the victim's name, he paused for exactly 3 seconds, then shook his head. "I don't socialize," he said. His voice was calm, almost bored. "Especially not with the kind of people who end up floating in rivers." That answer alone bought him a one-way ticket to the interrogation wing. The victim was identified as Thomas Klein, a former logistics contractor with no criminal record, at least, none that survived official scrutiny. But Klein had been visiting Belmarsh for the past 4 months, always under the guise of legal consultancy. No fixed inmate. No clear purpose. And 3 days ago, he'd signed in to see Elias Ward. CCTV showed them sitting across from each other, separated by reinforced glass. No audio. Just body language. Klein leaned forward. Ward leaned back. At one point, Ward smiled. That smile was now frozen on a still frame pinned to the incident board. Inside interview room C, the air smelled faintly of bleach and old coffee. Ward sat alone, cuffed to a steel ring beneath the table. He examined the scratches on its surface like they were historical artifacts. When Hensley entered, he looked up and offered a polite nod. "You're late," he said. Hensley didn't respond. She laid photographs on the table, one by one. The riverbank. The body. The cable ties biting into swollen wrists. Ward studied them carefully. No change in breathing. No twitch in his jaw. "Who is he?" Hensley asked. Ward finally looked at her. "Someone who made a mistake." That was the second thing that unsettled her. As the hours passed, the interview went nowhere. Ward denied knowing Klein beyond a single visit. Claimed it was about financial advice. Nothing illegal. Nothing personal. But inconsistencies began to surface. Phone records showed Klein had made multiple unregistered calls from burner phones, all pinging near Belmarsh. Prison logs revealed altered timestamps. Someone inside had been helping him move unnoticed. And then there was the mark on Klein's forearm. A small symbol carved into the skin. Not a gang sign. Not random. It matched a sketch found weeks earlier in Ward's cell, dismissed at the time as meaningless doodling. When Hensley returned to the interrogation room with that information, Ward's smile vanished for the first time. "That wasn't supposed to be found," he whispered. Hensley leaned in. "What wasn't?" Ward swallowed hard, eyes flicking toward the door. Toward the corridor beyond. Toward the prison itself. "They told me this place was secure," he said. "They lied?" Before Hensley could respond, an officer burst in, face pale, radio crackling with overlapping voices. "Ma'am," he said. "You need to see this." We searched Ward's old cell again. Hensley stood, heart pounding. What did you find? The officer hesitated. A second visitor pass. Hidden inside the wall. And a name on it we don't recognize. When Hensley looked back at Elias Ward, he was already shaking his head. Because whatever they just uncovered wasn't the beginning of the truth. It was proof they were already too late. The second visitor pass didn't exist in any official system. No digital record. No barcode trail. Just laminated plastic, worn thin, with a name typed in black ink, Daniel Mercer. No photo. No clearance level. No explanation for how it had passed through Belmarsh security again and again. That discovery changed everything. Belmarsh went into quiet lockdown. Not the kind announced over loudspeakers, but the kind felt in the air. Extra guards at junctions, radios turned low, eyes watching eyes. Detective Inspector Hensley knew what it meant. Someone on the inside was compromised. Possibly more than one. Elias Ward was moved to a deeper holding area, far from general population. The walk alone was enough to crack most inmates. Fluorescent lights hummed. Steel doors opened and closed like punctuation marks in a long, threatening sentence. Ward said nothing, but the confidence he'd worn in interview rooms was gone now, replaced by something brittle. Fear carefully controlled. They sat him down again. Same table. Same cuffs. Different energy. Hensley didn't start with questions. She started with silence. Minutes passed. Ward's breathing grew uneven. His eyes kept drifting to the ceiling vent, then the camera dome in the corner. When he finally spoke, it wasn't to deny anything. They promised me protection, he said. That was the deal. Who did? Hensley asked. Ward laughed softly, then stopped himself. You think I'm the one in control here? That's the mistake. She slid the second pass across the table. Daniel Mercer. Who is he? Ward stared at the name like it was a loaded weapon. A ghost, he said. Or at least he was supposed to be. Over the next hour, the story began to fracture. Mercer, according to Ward, wasn't a visitor. He was a handler. A man who moved between institutions and private contractors, arranging favors, silencing problems, erasing trails. Ward claimed Mercer had approached him months earlier, offering safety in exchange for information, names, routes, financial backdoors Ward had built before his arrest. I thought it was leverage, Ward said. I didn't realize it was a leash. Klein, the man from the river, wasn't supposed to die. He was a courier, a middleman who asked too many questions. When Ward refused to give up certain details, Klein threatened to expose the entire arrangement, to the press, to internal affairs, to anyone who would listen. So you killed him? Hensley said flatly. Ward shook his head. No. I warned him. That was when the lights flickered. Just once. Long enough to notice. Long enough to feel. The guard outside the room stiffened. Over the radio came a burst of static, then silence. Hensley stood, instincts screaming. Belmarsh wasn't supposed to flicker. Not here. Not now. The door at the far end of the corridor opened unexpectedly. Another officer appeared, breathless. We've got a problem, he said. One of our own didn't clock out last night. The name hit Hensley like a punch. Senior Custodial Officer Mark Ellison. Clean record. 12 years of service. He'd been on duty the same nights Mercer's pass had been used. Ellison's locker was empty. His flat, 5 miles away, showed signs of a hurried exit, drawers pulled out, documents missing, laptop gone. On the kitchen table, a single sheet of paper remained. A bank transfer receipt. Offshore. 7 figures. Back in the interrogation room, Ward's composure finally collapsed. He's going to disappear, Ward said, voice cracking. Ellison. Mercer. All of them. And when they do, I'm the loose end. Hensley leaned close. Then help me tie this off. Ward hesitated, then lowered his voice. Mercer isn't the top. He reports to someone who never steps inside prisons. Someone who uses places like this to recruit, threaten, and clean up messes. Name? Hensley demanded. Ward swallowed. I don't know it. I only know how they sign their work. He rolled up his sleeve. On the inside of his forearm was a faint scar, deliberate, precise. The same symbol carved into Thomas Klein. Before Hensley could react, alarms erupted across the wing. Red lights flashed. Doors slammed shut in sequence. A voice crackled over the intercom. All units, we have a confirmed breach in sublevel D. Hensley's blood ran cold. Sublevel D wasn't for inmates. It was for records. And whatever was stored down there, someone was trying very hard to erase it. Sublevel D smelled like dust and burnt plastic. Emergency lights pulsed red along the corridor, revealing filing cages ripped open and server cabinets hanging ajar like exposed ribs. Someone had come prepared. Someone who knew exactly where to go. Detective Inspector Hensley moved fast, flanked by armed officers, boots splashing through water leaking from a ruptured pipe. The breach alarm still wailed above them, but beneath it all was another sound, metal scraping concrete, steady and deliberate. They followed it to the archive room. Inside, a single terminal glowed in the darkness. Files were being deleted in real time, progress bars sliding forward with merciless efficiency. Standing at the console was Mark Ellison, his uniform discarded, sleeves rolled up, hands trembling as he worked. Step away, Hensley ordered. Now. Ellison froze. Slowly, he raised his hands. You don't understand, he said. None of you do. He didn't run. He didn't resist. That scared Hensley more than any weapon. As officers restrained him, the terminal completed its final deletion. The screen went black. Ellison sagged against the wall. It won't matter, he muttered. You're too late. They brought him in alive, but interrogation broke him in minutes. Not with threats. With facts. Bank transfers. Access logs. The visitor passes. Ellison had been Mercer's gatekeeper, paid to look away, to reroute cameras, to make sure certain men walked in and out of Belmarsh unseen. But Mercer was gone. No exit footage. No biometric hits. No trace beyond a single erased name, and a trail that vanished offshore. And Elias Ward? He was screaming. By the time Hensley reached the holding wing, guards were clustered outside Ward's cell, faces pale. Inside, Ward was curled on the floor, sobbing, eyes wild. He knows, Ward kept repeating. He knows I talked. Ward hadn't been attacked. No bruises. No weapons. Just his mattress torn open, its stuffing scattered across the cell. In the center of the room, laid out neatly on the concrete floor, was a symbol made from threads and fabric strips. The same symbol carved into Klein's skin. Mercer hadn't needed to be there. That was the interrogation that broke Elias Ward, not the questions, not the pressure, but the message. Even locked behind steel and cameras, he was still within reach. Ward gave everything after that. Account numbers. Dead drops. Names of shell companies. He signed statements until his hand cramped. He begged for protective custody, for relocation, for anything that would make the fear stop. 3 weeks later, a press conference announced a major corruption bust tied to private contractors and compromised prison officials. Ellison was charged. Several others were suspended. The case was declared a success. Officially, Mercer never existed. Unofficially, Hensley couldn't let it go. She reviewed the files that survived Sublevel D. Most were fragments, partial logs, corrupted videos, incomplete visitor records. But one detail kept resurfacing. Every facility Mercer had touched reported the same thing after his disappearance. Someone talked. Someone panicked. Someone died. Elias Ward was transferred to a high-security medical unit under a new identity. His cell was isolated. His movements restricted. For a while, it seemed enough. Until the night nurse found him unresponsive. No wounds. No toxins. No signs of struggle. The autopsy ruled it cardiac arrest brought on by extreme stress. A clean ending. Too clean. Hensley stood alone outside the unit, staring at the security monitor replaying Ward's final hours. At 2:14 a.m., the lights flickered, just once. At 2:15, Ward sat upright in bed, eyes wide, staring at the door. At 2:16, the feed glitched. When it returned, Ward was dead. 3 months later, a body was found in a car park outside a courthouse in Brussels. Male. Hands bound. Same carved symbol. Different country. Different system. Same signature. The case was quietly reopened. Files were reclassified. Names were redacted. And somewhere between the paperwork and the silence, one truth became impossible to ignore. They thought the danger ended at Belmarsh. It never did. If this story got under your skin, stay close, because the next one goes even deeper.